Welcome to the Content Amplified podcast, brought to you by Masset. Our goal is to help you get more from your marketing content. Each episode is a 10 to 15 minute interview with industry experts that share amazing insights to help you squeeze as much juice from your content as you possibly can. Here's today's interview.
Welcome back to another episode of Content Amplified. Today I'm joined by Erin. Erin, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Ben. Happy to be here.
Well, I'm really excited for the discussion today, and especially with what you're doing at work currently and have just gone through and how relevant that is. But just to catch everyone up to speed and get to know you a little bit, tell us about yourself. What do you love about marketing, a little bit about your career, and just let us get to know you.
Yeah, great. Yeah, thanks for asking. What I love about marketing, I love storytelling. I really love storytelling, personally and professionally, and finding that story that resonates for people and telling the story in a way that resonates with people. I think that's the fun part. My experience dates back. So I've been primarily in the direct-to-consumer space, starting early on in my career with Reader's Digest. So really telling those stories through direct mail on a very large canvas. So we had a lot of long-form content in the form of 4-page letters sending to consumers. And so I spent an early part of my career there. As the world sort of migrated online, I knew that was really the place I should really divert my career. So spent some time working in a direct-to-consumer costume and party supply e-com business, and then worked for several years for a pet food brand. So in a sales, e-com, international capacity. And then more recently, I'm with Swanson Health Products, where I'm the SVP of marketing. And what's really fun, I love storytelling. And I came in last year and we completed a complete brand refresh for a 55-year-old brand. So it's been really fun to take a brand and products that have been trusted for years and really pull out all the things that are really special about that and show it to the world in a different way. So it's been a lot of fun. I love
that. Yeah, that's cool. That's a fun moment where you can kind of take the reins on really refreshing a brand that's established and trusted and loved, and take it into the next kind of generation of what it's going to become for the next 55 and 100 years, things like that. So when you're doing this brand refresh, it sounds like you really cared about testing and learning from your testing to understand how the content should work, how the brand refresh should go. Talk to us a little bit more about why you put such a big emphasis on testing, and then ultimately how you did that and what you kind of found through that process.
Yeah. Well, what's really interesting is, Swanson was established as a catalog company. So we had a lot of long form content in existence from that channel, as well as a really robust blog. So coming in, we sort of had me coming in, we had that base. So as we refreshed the brand and really leaned into what we knew was important to consumers, so we know that consumers are looking for experts. So whether it's experts within Swanson or partners that we work with outside of Swanson, they're looking for an ally who can help them understand what's the right vitamin or supplement for me. We knew we need to lean into those things. And we also needed to make sure that we were helping them understand, how do you find the quality products that you want? So we sort of knew where we needed to start with. And so from that, with the brand refresh, part of our story is talking about the expertise that we have in-house. We have scientists, pharmacists, licensed nutritionists. So how do we leverage that talent in-house to tell our story? So we've really leaned into internal experts to take sort of that like long form content and pull snacks out of it and then test it in different channels. So for example, we've been leaning quite a bit into video, which I know we're a little bit later to the game and leaning into it, but we also have an older demographic. And we also service 3 different generations, right? That aren't, that are online. They're looking for content. And so what kind of content can we bring to them that's relevant to each of those age groups? So we've done a lot of testing in social, so paid and organic, really making sure that we're testing different messaging, different, I'd say, video length, still content versus video content. And it's been really interesting to see what resonates when you go in with your hypothesis and think this is going to be important, and you learn something completely different. which then causes you to pivot and take a completely different route. So it's been humbling to realize, like, you don't know all the answers. The consumer will tell you the answer, and it's not always what you think it is.
Yeah, I love that. And to me, I was actually talking to someone at an event last night, and it was fascinating because we were talking about people calling themselves data-driven marketers. And I think sometimes people like to use that term. They get on Google Analytics and they say, oh, great, well, we know traffic. And they use that data to really just confirm their own bias or just their own opinions. But I think the true data-driven marketers are the ones who make assumptions, they test it, and then realize they're wrong and pivot. Like what you just said, to me, believes like it shows the true value of data-driven marketing because you were pivoting off of data. How did you get that message to the team? How did you get everyone on board to these ideas of we're going to need to pivot? Like the data is going to show us that we're wrong and things like that. Like we've got to learn as a group. How are you facilitating that kind of conversation?
I will say, number one, we have fantastic leadership that supports it. From the top down, the words of our CEO was, go ahead and break things. I tell my team, run with scissors. But the idea really is we have to test and learn, or we're never going to move any further. I just had a test that we invested in, and it didn't work at all. And we went in and we actually built a case and we looked at baselines of, other brands, other people similar in our category. And quite honestly, it didn't line up where we needed it to. And I didn't get beat up for it either. I mean, what we said was, okay, well, let's take a look at the content we use. Did this not work in this particular channel? What would we do different? How would we do it different going forward? Already looked at what are the different ways that we could reframe this. We used content that was specifically brand focused. So we looked at, okay, next time do we go back with a product focus and tell a robust product story? Do we go back and tell our brand story differently? So we've been able to sort of lay out what would we do differently next time and how would we invest differently there to make that work. And honestly, I'll tell you, so I actually presented this to the team yesterday, and the feedback from our senior leadership was like, great, we learned, we thought this would work. It didn't work. Let's be honest with ourselves and let's move on. Let's learn from this and move on. So I think you have to have leadership, I think, that actually supports that as well. Like you got to say it and be comfortable with things might not turn out the way that you want it to. I think it helps people take risks that they wouldn't normally take. But it's, I'm learning and growing too. I mean, I've been doing this for almost 30 years and I still, there's still things that surprise me every single day.
Yeah, I love that. There's so many good things in what you just said. I love that. Obviously, if you want to be a test and learn environment, you have to have solid leadership. I love how you talked about the analysis of, okay, it did or didn't work. First of all, a lot of people run campaigns and they have no way of measuring did it or did it not work. And you can actually answer that question, which is amazing. And then on top of that, you try to answer why and what are we going to do in the future? And you presented that, you lived up to that. The culture accepted that. That is a healthy environment. I mean, for any marketer who is afraid to run a test because it won't always be a home run and they might get, a slap on the wrist from leadership, hopefully in a very figurative sense, not an actual literal, that would be bad. You may want to consider either managing up to help leadership understand, or potentially work with someone like Aaron where, it's embraced and it's okay and it's, optimal. Now, talk to me about the logistics. Sometimes we say we want to be data driven, we want to test, we want to learn. Are you using particular platforms that have been helpful? Are you using specific tools? How are you keeping that discipline of actually tracking? And how do you know if something was successful or not versus just, we ran it and got these results? How do you measure that?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So we look at things in sort of a full funnel approach. So we're looking at, obviously, one, you're looking at what's your goal. And in the case of this particular test, it was brand awareness. But you do also want to have a little bit of revenue that you can tie back to as well. So when I presented my case for funding for this particular test, because it was a pretty significant investment, I built it off of, here's what we could expect from a brand awareness standpoint. So we looked at what kind of unique site visitors, what lift we would see in unique site visitors, what kind of increase we'd see in branded search, and looking at social metrics, how much do we see increase in engagement? So that was sort of on the awareness side. On, I would say, the bottom of the funnel metrics, the partner we worked with provided metrics that we really could see our CPMs. We could look at ROAS. We could look at unique site visitors. And then we sort of checked it against, we also worked with a third party for MMM and looked at what they perceived how they measured success. And so we really kind of took all three of those together into consideration for us to say, and I shouldn't say it was a complete failure. It wasn't a complete failure. It definitely, we saw there was opportunity, but it was nice to sort of have three different checkpoints to understand, okay, we can see where this is where the opportunity was because, we perhaps had enough site visitors, but maybe they weren't converting, or, we saw an increase in brand awareness. So that part's helpful, but do we need to see a bigger increase in brand awareness for that to feel like it's worth the investment in the future? So, and when we built the business case to present for the funding, we came out and said upfront, there's going to be, two-way play here. We want to increase brand awareness, and we obviously want to try to break even, but really the play is brand awareness. And so when you tell that story and you bring leadership along for the ride, it's easy to, one, get approval, and easier to get approval, and two, understand that everything's not going to work, right? Because we all aligned, we all had held hands and jumped in together. So, and like I said, I think what speaks volumes is that there's the opportunity to continue to test along with that path. So yeah, I think it's really important to make sure you're telling the story up front and bringing people along for the ride. It helps.
I love that. And I love how you have an organization where you actually go out and kind of pitch these things. You get buy-in before you get budget, things of that nature. I think that's really important. What I also really loved about what you just said is this concept of you knew different impacts at different levels of the funnel and knew that it might have greater impacts at certain places than others. I think a lot of times we're really roped into saying revenue only activities, but I love that you measured at the different levels. One other question that I kind of wanted to ask, you talked about you have multiple generations of people you're marketing to, multiple channels, multiple content types. How do you manage segmentation when it comes to testing? How do you look at that from a philosophy standpoint? How are you trying to gather those insights to say, oh, well, this generation is interacting with this on this channel in this way? I mean, if you have very distinct personas, how do you segment and separate those?
We're still learning. I'm going to start with that. Here's the process we're going through right now. Before we did our brand refresh, we actually did a consumer insight survey. So we looked at our audience, looked at general pop, and we're able to sort of understand those different segments. And we also were able to understand, where are they consuming content? Where are they looking for more information about vitamins and supplements? So we're at the point where we are targeting those different generations on in those different channels. So whether it might be print, it actually might be digital, right? It's social. So we're testing in different channels, those different audiences. So I think, we're trying to tailor our content, again, going back to what we think would resonate. Let's just say like a Gen X type audience. Would this content resonate with them? Would this resonate better with baby boomers? So again, we're building this plane while we're flying it, for sure. And it's fun. And you're catching us we just took off and we're we're sailing along, we still got a ways to go, but we're, it's fun. We know the journey is going to be fun.
I love that. And honestly, regardless of where you're at in your business, I think it always feels like that.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't give themselves the credit to say, hey, we actually have a lot of this built in place, but that constant testing and learning is the ability to improve a brand, to improve a business, things of that nature. Well, we only got about 1-2 minutes left. So final question, any other pieces of advice when it comes to testing and learning, things that you wish you would have known as you started out on this brand refresh journey where you're like, man, I really wish I would have focused on this, or I was so grateful we learned this, or this input that we got during this process? Any kind of final things as people are learning how to test and learn with their content and their brand and their marketing?
I would say be really bold in what you test, because I have personally, in this role and many other roles I've had, things you test that you think for sure will not work sometimes are your most powerful pieces of content. And I think it's okay to be bold, especially in a testing situation. It's your sort of your opportunity to, to get a little wild, but definitely be bold. Be bold when you test, because that's the only way you win big.
I love that. I love that. That is an awesome way to end this episode off. Erin, thank you so much for the time and the information and sharing your experience. If anyone wants to reach out and connect with you online, how can they find you?
LinkedIn is the best place to reach me. Erin Del Conte on LinkedIn.
Very cool. And we'll link to your profile in the notes. Again, thank you so much for the time. Appreciate it today.
Thanks, Ben. Happy to be here.
Thank you for listening to the Content Amplified podcast. Please subscribe and leave us a review. And for additional ways to get more out of your content, visit our website at getmasset.com. That's getmasset.com. And tune in next time to the Content Amplified podcast.